Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Subscription Scaled. I'm your host, Nick Frederick. With me today is Greg Connolly, who is the co-founder and CEO of Trifecta. Greg, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. Excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to chat with you. We were just talking a second ago. I had your sister Liz on about a year and a half ago, and we had a great conversation. It was a fun interview. I think you got a little bit of a different perspective and fun to get some updates and kind of look at things now, given the current market conditions. But yeah, for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you guys came to start Trifecta.
Yep, absolutely. So I'll give you the quick high level summary. Multi-time entrepreneur, have either played in the software or the e-commerce spaces. Always subscription. With software as a service in the
Sure.
San Francisco Bay Area. With subscription, Trifecta has been my biggest hit by far. I'm sure Liz gave you some of the high level metrics, but in our first 5 years in business, we eclipsed 100 million in ARR. We're now in year 8, and it's been a hell of a ride getting into direct consumer. Fundamentally different than software in a bunch of ways, but definitely an exciting industry. And in our case, we ship fully prepared food from facilities that we have across the U.S., direct consumers nationwide. So over 20,000 cities, all 50 states. And we also have a smartphone app, which has a premium subscription model built into it as well. Makes us more of like a Peloton for nutrition type offering,
Okay.
where we have the food and we'll ship it directly to your house, but we'll also tell you what to eat, when to eat it, what macros and calories to eat, give you workouts, all of that type of stuff through our software.
Gotcha. So it's more of a healthy lifestyle that has the food component to it rather than the typical meal delivery service that's just there so you got something in the fridge, right?
Yep, exactly. I mean, convenience is definitely part of the
Sure.
equation for us or anybody else, but
Yeah.
we want to provide a total solution because our market niche is health and fitness. We're not focused on, giving you the most convenient food. We are focused on giving you a 6-pack as quickly as possible.
All right. That's a good goal. That in and of itself is pretty different than I don't know if you could directly consider them competitors, but there is a big difference between, like I said, putting meals in the fridge so that you can go grab something when you need it versus I have a goal of fitness or
Mhm.
leading a healthier lifestyle. And there's actually not that many ways to do that, or it's not that easy to do, especially for those that are busier professionals, work a lot. So you guys are really giving them a way to do that in a way that they're not having to go out to Whole Foods and buy the whole everything and make it themselves, right?
Yep, absolutely. And that's where I think convenience is a big part of our overall value prop is, anybody who's tried to meal prep themselves, either they're doing it the miserable way where they go to Costco and they buy 5 pounds of chicken and 6 pounds of broccoli and they're just choking it down by Thursday every week, wondering if it's even fresh anymore, type thing. Or you're trying to do a gourmet meal every few days in the crock pot or something, and it's really time consuming.
Hmm.
That is the difficulty of it. There are ways to short circuit it a little bit with something like DoorDash, but then you're paying incredible
Right.
amounts of money in order to be able to do it because all the fees and delivery and all of that. Um, so yeah, we're somewhere in between, but we try and stay focused on, and that's something I'd relay to your audience as well. Is like when you figure out what your USP is, your unique selling proposition is, like zoom into that niche as hard as you possibly can. We've really worked to totally own health and fitness, and that's involved us partnering with gym chains like 24 Hour
Okay.
Fitness and F45 and CrossFit and you name it, all the way to sports leagues. Like, over the years, we've partnered with everybody from, the UFC. We built their fight prep program for them for the first time and ran it for 3.5 years before we turned it over to the UFC PI, all the way to, CrossFit as a sport. We ran the PGA Tour's nutrition program, and we title sponsor things like the Mr. Olympia, which is the big bodybuilding contest that
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jay Cutler and all them won. So we said go deep in our segment, which is health and fitness. And when it comes to advertising and getting people to be attracted to the brand, that is the kind of market niche and value prop that we're getting out there in all of our social media ads or otherwise.
Do you think for some startups who are looking for any avenue to revenue, right? They're just out there trying to grab it wherever they can get it. There's a fear that if I go too niche, like I'm going to exclude some customers that maybe possibly would have otherwise come and used my product or service. How do you balance that?
I think it is a big fear for a huge number of entrepreneurs, and I would just straight up tell them that they're wrong.
Yeah.
If someone like Nike started out in running, and then they moved into different segments like basketball. Obviously there's been that great Matt Damon movie Air that just came out. I'd highly recommend any consumer CEO read Shoe Dog, Phil Knight's book. But ultimately they expanded the TAM, the total addressable market of exercise shoes, which is really what they started selling, into an enormous market. They're 80 billion a year in revenue at this point. So whatever market you're in, if you think it has legs, lean into it. Health and fitness was not a thing until the 1950s even. And it's growing by leaps and bounds year over year now. So whatever's the mistake I think entrepreneurs make is they end up by, it's the cliche, if you try and be everything to everyone, you end up being nobody to anybody.
Right.
They go too mass market too soon, and then at that point you're competing on price and other commodity features. You really, when you're building a brand, start with the brand positioning first. Like even before we came up with the name Trifecta, we used one of the best branding agencies in the world. And they came up with Monster Energy and Pabst Blue Ribbon and a whole bunch of the brands you guys would all be familiar with. They also came up with Trifecta, but they pitched us a bunch of food names. Some of them were French and all kinds of other things. And we said, okay, what is the brand positioning that we're going after? And we said, well, we're building this business in order to get people into the best shape possible. That's like the why behind the company, the problem that we're trying to solve. Okay. So if we're going to go after that market segment, then we need the brand name along with all the positioning that's going to follow that to match that particular market segment that we're targeting. Otherwise, you don't know who your customers are, so you don't know how to position your ads. And that will lead to you having a very high customer acquisition cost.
Yeah.
So I'll pause there. Yeah.
Well, in terms of your addressable market, then how do you segment down and find and market to those people who want, I assume convenience is a big factor, but they want convenience and healthy, right? There's this massive universe of consumers and many of them who do like meal delivery kits, but you're looking for a subset of that. So you talked about the partnerships. That sounds like, an absolute great way to kind of drill down into that particular segment. But what are some other things you guys have tried to do to get after them and not necessarily get lost in the noise over here of consumers who just aren't a good fit for you?
Yep. There are several ways. You can also target influencers / creators, whatever we're calling them these days, that are specific to your niche. And, I always hear B2B businesses tell me, oh, there's no influencer in my space. There's a blog or some YouTuber or somebody that is an influencer in your particular space. Absolutely. I don't care if you're selling software to the government. there's some blog that talks about how to sell software to the government, at large scale. So figuring out who your influencers are, whether they're Instagrammers or YouTubers or certain blogs or industry specialists, and aligning with them I think that can be how you can lean into your target
Yeah.
market segment and connect with those
Hmm.
customers. For us, if you take somebody like Jay Cutler, 4-time Mr. Olympia, kind of the modern day Arnold Schwarzenegger type thing. He is people that follow him on social media, no matter what channel it is, they're probably following him for his fitness and nutrition advice. They're
Hmm.
not following him to learn more about scaling subscription companies or how to build a new laptop. They're following him for directly relevant information to my brand positioning. So targeting influencers that make sense from that standpoint. And
Hmm.
then at this point, post iOS 14, you are relatively algorithm dependent within the platforms. And because of that, you still need to, that means you actually need to be more crystal clear about your brand positioning
Okay.
and use that to really build almost like a messaging constitution for your company where you are highlighting the features and benefits of your particular product to the market segment you're trying to talk to. Then even if you're spraying, we spend millions of dollars on paid media,
Hmm.
mostly with Google and Meta. Even though you're spraying a much larger audience these days, you're still going to attract those high LTV customers that match your particular segment that you're after, by talking to them with messaging that fits your brand positioning. So it's like
Okay.
going back to 2012 when it was like pre Facebook being amazing at advertising is really what entrepreneurs have to do now because, CPMs and all of that are
Yeah.
so much higher today than they were historically. Unless you have in our industry, the 200-pound gorilla is HelloFresh. They're
Hmm.
at 8 billion in ARR and they can spend at an incredibly high customer acquisition cost that, companies that are in the 9 figures like us just can't afford. And because of that, we have to be more direct about the particular customer we're targeting. It can't just be mass market spending these enormous marketing budgets like somebody like that, they do.
So you talk about that to be effective on, let's just say, Facebook right now. Your messaging, even though you can't necessarily segment the audience the way that you could before, your messaging that you're putting in front of a user is very specific, so that if it doesn't apply to somebody, almost hopefully they do scroll by, right? Like
Mhm.
it isn't something they're going to pay attention to. But if you're into fitness and you see fitness meal trifecta, that's something that they're going to cue in on right away, or
Yep.
hopefully,
Well,
right? That the
yeah, and you may not even be into fitness, but you want to be, and you go, okay,
Okay.
this is going to help me,
Hmm.
achieve that particular goal. Because if you're just buying us for convenience, I'm not going to taste as good as the taco truck down the street from your house, and you're going to churn out. So, I don't want to pay a customer acquisition cost on someone who's going to churn out in
Yeah.
week 1 or 2 because they realize
Yeah.
that, they're eating health food and it doesn't taste as good as a, carne asada burrito type thing. And they're shocked after they receive the food that, it's healthy for you.
Yeah.
I want people that want to be
One.
healthy and are already either living that lifestyle. Those are my super high LTV customers, or
Hmm.
they want to live that lifestyle. And those are going to be people that are somewhere along my churn curve going, I'm interested in living this lifestyle. And I hope Trifecta will be the tool that will get me there. I mean, that's really what any of us is doing with any of these businesses, is trying to um, provide a service that solves a problem for our target customer. And if I solve a problem that the people I'm subscribing aren't looking to solve, then they're going to churn out. And
Absolutely.
I don't want to acquire them anyway.
Yeah. Right. So to that end, how long do you need a new member to stay in order to offset that acquisition cost?
It really depends on, what channel they come through, but
Okay.
anywhere from a week to as much as 8 weeks, depending
Okay.
on, what promo they got, what channel we acquired them through, et cetera.
Hmm.
I tend to be, some of the other entrepreneurs that you've had on the show, I tend to be more in their camp of looking at a blended customer acquisition cost, because, you know, a lot of people fall into the trap of going, oh man, Meta's got a higher CAC than Google ads do. I'm going to spend all my money on Google ads. And it's like, well, you're not really populating the top of the funnel if you do that. Like what Google ads does is they slide their business card in front of customers right at the last second when they're already searching for what you sell.
Yeah.
And then they
Yeah.
take some of your money in the process.
Yeah.
You know, social ads, influencers, blog posts, et cetera, allow you to tell the story about the brand in a much more effective way. So you'll oftentimes see channels like YouTube will have, you know, some of the highest customer acquisition costs you see, but you can do the most storytelling. So they're going to lift your direct organic channels more effectively than, you know, than most other channels. So, so that's a mistake I think a lot of entrepreneurs make, is they try and directly follow the numbers, and you have to really make sure you're introducing new customers to your brand continuously. I don't care if it's radio, direct mail, YouTube, you know, add to carts in Facebook instead of purchase, you know, optimization. There's a lot of ways to do it, but you gotta be introducing yourself to new customers, because Tim Cook us all, you know, pardon my French, with iOS 14, and you know, I could write a PhD dissertation on how he's the one that actually crashed the economy. It's, you know, all advertising when that happened got about roughly 30 to 35% less effective. And what that translates to for businesses of all shapes and sizes is it got 30 to 35% more expensive. So that, you know, everything in advertising is ROAS. It's how, you know, what's your ROI on that advertising. So if it gets more, or less effective, the inverse of that is it's now more expensive to you know, to acquire those same customers. So, you know, yeah, there was too much liquidity in the market, and I could, you know, go on and on about that as well. But, you know, the point of the story is iOS 14 did a tremendous amount of damage to the economy across all advertising. And he did that to, you know, because he's a real competitive guy. He wanted to kneecap, you know, Facebook and Google, and he did. Now
we talk about it on almost every single one of these episodes. So everybody felt it, right? It reverberated across the entire industry. You were talking about
people ask me, they're like, well, why do you have an Android? And I'm like, I hate Tim Cook. That's why.
I'm sticking it back to him.
Yep, exactly. I'm like, if I can get rid of that device, you know, he loses his power.
Yeah. You were talking about bringing in customers. Always important to bring in customers from different channels, not just the ones that's going to provide the best perceived ROI or lowest acquisition cost. Is it safe to assume that you guys rely fairly heavily and push referrals as well from your existing customers to bring in new customers?
Yeah, I mean, that's over time what you hope to see with a brand is you're, you know, in any multi-touch attribution platform, you're going to have the different channels. It'll be like search ads, you know, direct, organic, you know, CRM. You know, everybody uses CRM now because email is also SMS and push. You're going to have all these different channels, and you're tracking the efficacy of each of these channels in your software. Now, when you're doing that, what you want to see is a larger and larger percentage of your overall conversions are coming from direct or organic. And that means the brand is getting more and more popular and more visible. You know, when we first launched, it was literally 0% of our overall traffic. And, you know, by year 5, it was north of 50% of our overall traffic and conversions, and climbing.
Wow.
And, you know, that's real value for us, as well as our venture capital and private equity investors, because, you know, that's free money. My customer acquisition cost on those people is 0. Now on the, you know, because a lot of them are just typing trifectanutrition.com into their browser because they saw us on Instagram, or, you know, searched for Trifecta on Google. Now, some of those people may have come from other ads, but the probability is they more likely came from an ad that had some storytelling involved in it than an ad that was, you know, something like a Google, you know, not a display ad, a search ad, You know,
Hmm.
I'm usually not Googling something and then reading the ads to learn about the product. You know,
Right.
you're usually Google then click. But on Facebook or TikTok or Snapchat or YouTube or any other social channel, I may watch a video and learn a tremendous amount about that ad and then go back and directly go to their website later. You know, I've got a 2-year-old, so I can't always do things like the moment I'm I'm trying to. But it's a lot of people fall into that situation. You know, they see something on their favorite influencer's feed or an ad on a social channel, and then they search for it later, and they show up in your attribution as direct organic, but they came from, you know, an existing channel that you know, you were advertising.
Do you see a significant difference in lifetime value for customers that came through the quote unquote education channels versus those that came through cost per click?
It's usually higher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now a certain amount of people, you know, Google's going to hate me for saying this. I love my Google team. Don't me guys, but we significantly reduced our uh, brand ad spend on Google and got the same amount of brand conversions.
Really?
So Google's pitch to you will be, hey, you're only X
Yeah.
percentage of the pie of your own brand, you know, blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah. But in reality, if someone's searching for Trifecta on Google and they see an ad for one of my competitors, they're very likely to scroll past it or click on it and bounce. So
Okay.
if I click on a competitor and then bounce and then, you know, go back to the Google SERPs page, you know, search engine results page, and scroll down and click on Trifecta and come to my homepage, you know, I didn't lose anything from, you know, my competitor potentially advertising with my brand. So yeah, that one was surprising for us because
Okay.
Google had kind of reconvinced us to do tons of brand advertising,
Hmm.
and we slashed that budget in half in the current economy, and we get the same amount of conversions from brands,
Wow. Yeah.
SEM brand. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you think that that worked now because of all of the years of building up a brand and people actually searching for a name? In other words, do you think that would have been the same result 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Well, to see that ad, they would have had to search for the name anyway.
Right.
So
Well, yeah, good point. Good
yeah.
point.
So no matter
Yeah.
what, it's going to just be a ratio. So even if I had the most famous brand in our space, you know, ultimately it's just going to be, you know, you can't outspend on brand search the amount of search traffic you're getting. You know, so yeah, it's not like we spend a huge percentage of our budget on it anyways, but
Yeah.
it was a meaningful enough percent that when we slashed it in half, our CAC dropped even more.
Gotcha. So let's talk about how you've grown the business, right? 8 years in, 100 million in ARR. You guys have grown at a very healthy rate. What was the investment in the early years? What does it look like now, especially given, you know, the challenging capital market? Have you guys changed your approach, or are your investors looking for different things now than maybe they were 5 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I would say post iOS 14, a ton of things had to change.
Okay.
We were lucky in that we had a CDP and we're collecting a lot of customer data platform, and we're collecting a lot of first party data prior to the iOS 14 change. So I think that
Okay.
diminished the impact it had on us compared to some other brands. We also have, you know, the conversion APIs set up with all the platforms. So we're doing our best to go around Apple and Tim Cook as best as we can, you know, in partnership with the advertising platforms. But you know, undoubtedly had an impact, and we've undoubtedly had to get, you know, more clever and strategic with communicating our brand positioning and the value props and features of the product.
Hmm.
So I do think that is a big part of what's been happening since probably mid 2021, around when iOS 14. I mean, it's hilarious. You see iOS 14 hit, and then like the stock market crest, and it
Hmm.
starts. I mean, it's literally like, God, the timing. If it was an iOS 14, the timing is oddly
Way too
perfect.
coincidental.
It is just right on the nose. So, So yeah, I mean, long story short, yes. I mean, things are a lot more first party data dependent now. We're a lot more data dependent now. You can't just trust the platforms, and we also have to be more strategic about how we think of our funnel advertising, because, you imagine for any subscription business, I mean, your audience that's listening to this is largely subscription businesses. If your 7-day window on Facebook, you could have a customer who buys 7 days later, they fall out of the cookie window and you're now advertising to them again. Now with conversion API and, the lists it uploads and stuff, there are some ways to get around that, but I have 2 accounts with Trifecta, my own business, and I still see our ads. So there's a lot of wasted advertising dollars across all brands because the cookie windows are collapsed now. So that's why a lot of people will, practically everybody has their advertising targeted to purchase at this point, because it's going to show the best ROAS. But that's because, Facebook will tell you add to cart, click through rate, all of that. If they add to cart and they purchase, Facebook's going to attribute all the revenue to the purchase.
Okay.
Ad set or ad campaign. So it's going to make all your other campaigns that are further up the funnel look like they have terrible ROAS.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So
to that end, how many times do you think a customer needs to see your ad in order to convert?
It really depends. We get a fair amount of direct response, but usually the industry norms, 5 to as many as 12, 14 times. I mean, we're trying not to run ads at that level of frequency, but people will see us across multiple channels. I mean, when we took over CrossFit, for example, in 2017, it was like we picked up the sport, then we picked up the publications, then we pick up the top athletes. Then it's like, if you do CrossFit, you see us everywhere. You see us on your favorite athletes' Instagrams and YouTubes. You see us at the games and, in the gyms. You see us in the magazines and on the podcast. If you're in that ecosystem, we're everywhere you look. And, that's, well, I mean, that's part of why segmentation is so important. Like, a lot of entrepreneurs are just jumping after one opportunity to the next, and they don't think, okay, well, if I really want to make this segment of consumers familiar with my brand, I need to be really strategic about how I'm spending my ad dollars, because we all have a limited amount of ad dollars to spend. And, God knows Facebook and Google can spend it at blinding speed. So, it's ultimately down to going, okay, where do I want to, saturate my audience as much as possible? I mean, for somebody like you with, subscription scaled, it's like, okay, what other channels of people would I interact with that would make sense? Do I want to go out and sponsor Jason Calcanis from the All In podcast and This Week in Startups? He deals with pretty much nothing but subscription software companies. Do I want to go after Gary V because he does a lot of direct to consumer brands? There's, for everybody, there's like a specific ecosystem that makes sense for their particular brand and market they're targeting. And if you're trying to sell to subscription businesses and CEOs of those subscription businesses, like, go after the influencers that and publications that those people are reading. You know what I mean? Like, get deep in that particular market segment. So yeah, it's one of the things I think we've done better than all of our competition, even the big players, and it shows. If you look at our Instagram, we have like something like 40 times the engagement as anybody else in the space, even the big multi-billion-dollar player. We kill them on social media, and it's because our audience is engaged with the brand. They're not just seeing an ad and hopefully clicking, and we're just going to like play the data and hope we get enough of them that the churn curve doesn't look terrible for Wall Street. That's not our strategy.
Well, I mean, you guys certainly cater to a community, right? Of very specific people trying for a very specific outcome. HelloFresh and the others is every human who just doesn't want to cook a meal at home, right? It's very different.
Yep. And that's why they have to compete on discounts and price. And,
Mhm.
I know where they're sourcing their commodities from. And, trust me, you want to be eating our meat, not, not our competitor. There's a reason they can sell it to you for that cheap. So yeah, I mean, long story short, it's really important to know who your customer is and where you're marketing to them, and then go deep in that segment so you can really try and own it. And even for us in the health and fitness world, we bit off pieces of it one at a time. I didn't go and try and sponsor every sports league. I mean, I didn't even
Mhm.
sponsor every sports league today. Nor does even somebody like Nike. But I targeted the ones that I could afford, that were, very likely super high LTV
Mhm.
customers for me. Like, if you're doing CrossFit, you're probably pretty hardcore and really focused on your fitness. Like, that is a lot harder than going to Planet Fitness and, eating a bagel and, sitting on the leg press machine for 20 minutes. Like, those people are into their fitness,
Right.
and therefore they're probably pretty likely to be into their nutrition as well.
Yeah.
So, targeting the people that are likely the best fit first, and then expanding out into periphery channels from there.
What else are you guys doing to not just, engage with them from a nutrition and a meal perspective, but engage with that community? Like, I know you're obviously getting involved in these sports leagues, but like exercise plans and is it all kind of creating this ecosystem around them, or at least giving them access to those types of resources?
Yes. So one of the things that we did is, as part of our Series A, we acquired an app company called DMW Design Group, and they owned a few apps at the time. We divested everything except for the most popular CrossFit app in the world at the time,
Okay.
because that was really one of the first segments we were going after the first couple years
Hmm.
of the business, and it already had a bunch of workouts in it, and we bolted on 7 million food database. And now we've bolted on, like, a nutrition program. So if you, Nick, order Trifecta, we're going to email you and say, hey, download the program to go along with your food. And we'll give you custom to you calories and macros, and, videos walking you through step by step wherever you're at in your journey. You're already in good shape, but say you're someone who's 400 pounds, I'm going to give you a different, like, stage to follow, depending on wherever you are as a human
Yeah.
being, whether you're male, female, whether you exercise a lot or don't exercise at all. We're going to take all these input factors and give you a customized program to follow along with eating the food. And that's something that nobody else in the market has.
Yeah.
And that's specifically because that's what our audience wants. If
Yeah.
I'm if I'm
Yeah.
getting it, if I want to get a six pack, that's fucking hard. It's really difficult to not get French fries when you sit down at, whatever restaurant. I love
Hmm.
French fries, and I'm the CEO
Hmm.
of the company, but it's teaching them, how to prime their environment, and, behavioral cues, and why, when they sit down, it's so hard to order the chicken salad instead of the burger and fries. Walking them through step by step. And we have, like, videos and trainings and thousands of blog posts and guides and all of that to hold customers' hands through the process. Because otherwise, what they experience from our customers or from our competitors, they just ship you a box with food in it, and they're like, good luck, Nick.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
there's nothing to really build out that program to go along with it. And that's something we uniquely do in our space. And the app actually has more users than the food. I mean, it's had multi-millions of downloads. It's a real source of revenue for us, because it's providing people with a lot of value. It's not a Trifecta app that is just another channel to order Trifecta. Like, you can manage your subscription in it, but
Hmm.
that's not the main purpose of the
That's
app.
not the main purpose.
If you
Yeah.
download any of my competitors' apps, it's just another way to order their shit.
Yeah.
It's not, there is an actual software value. That's why we think of ourselves more like a Peloton, where we are we're trying to, how Peloton disrupted the exercise equipment space is they weren't just another exercise bike or treadmill. They had the software and all of that to go along with it.
The
And we're really,
classes, yeah.
the
Mhm.
classes, you're competing against your friends, all of that was tied up in the experience. And you don't think of Peloton as an exercise bike plus software. You think of it as that one thing. And that's what we're striving for with Trifecta. Is you're doing Trifecta, which includes the program, the training, the coaching, and the food as an all-in-one solution, so we can add more value to the market than just shipping people food in a box.
Yeah, I mean that sort of value and engagement that you guys are facilitating with your members, that is the formula to long-term, big lifetime value, right? Because now they're in this world, they love it, they're getting the value out of it, they're seeing the results, and now why would I go anywhere else, right? Why would I?
Yep.
This is it for me. This is part of me now.
Exactly right, and that is the our subscribers that use the premium version of the app and the food have almost double the average lifetime value of our regular subscribers.
Makes all the sense in the world. Yeah.
They have way more customer success, and that's the name of the game for all of us. We're all in business to try and solve a problem for a particular type of customer. And if we can help them solve the problem, to answer your initial question, which is, is about referrals and, additional value add that we bring. Yes, that's how we get them to refer us is they, if you were 350 pounds and all of a sudden you're 175 pounds with a six pack, everybody's going to be like, holy shit, Karen, what did you do? And if Karen's like, oh, I use Trifecta, that's like the best advert. That's way better than any Facebook ad or anything I could ever do. Everybody that she or he says that to is like, damn, Trifecta. Okay, I got to check this out. I want to check this out. I want my dream body. And there's people on their website that are 65 competing in their first bodybuilding contest. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That is, we're selling. It's not food. It's not software. We're selling people getting an incredible physique. And the most effective way to do that is, not go to the gym. I think the gym is important. I go to the gym every single day, but it's their nutrition. Nutrition is 80+% of the equation, and it's the most forgotten part about health.
So what's next for you guys? You've obviously continued to grow the business pretty healthy year over year. Is it expanding into new markets, new lines, additional sports partnerships? What does the future look like for you guys for the next couple of years?
I think there's a lot of there's still a ton of white space in our industry. I mean, the TAM is continuing to grow pretty significantly. So, scaling up the business, releasing new features with the app. We're about to release meal choice on the website, which is huge for us. It's something we've wanted for years and years, and we'll finally have where people can, if you, Nick, want to eat our, chorizo breakfast burrito every single breakfast, knock yourself out. You can now do that. You know what I mean? You can pick the individual meals, which is something our competitors have been able to do for a long time. So new feature releases as we try and continue to scale. And, candidly, for our industry, I think there will probably be over time some consolidation, that's so fragmented with so many players. And then one big giant player, with HelloFresh that I think there will probably over time, over the next few years, be a fair amount of consolidation between the players. And, there'll be some people that go bust, like, Nestle got a hold of Freshly and, God willing, they tried their hardest, I'm sure, but they blew that thing up with, with blinding speed.
Lit it on fire.
I think direct to consumer is, bless their hearts, but I think direct to consumer is not something CPG companies are great at. They don't realize the marketing value of their brand already being on every shelf in the world, and they go, "Wow, I'm Coca-Cola and I'm great at marketing." And it's like, well, that's kind of because Coca-Cola is everywhere and everybody's already heard of it.
It's already everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. It's you might not be quite as good at marketing as you think you are. So yeah, long story short, more expansion, watching the consolidation in the market, maybe fundraising when the capital markets open up. We'd love to IPO at some point over time.
Okay.
So yeah, just stay in the course, trying to keep our unit level economics in line in this crazy market environment.
Yeah, get through it for sure.
Yep.
Well, Greg, I really enjoyed this conversation. It was fun hearing about the business from your perspective. If any listeners have questions about some of the things we talked about today, or want to learn more about Trifecta, where are the best places to go?
I mean, website that I mentioned, trifectanutrition.com. And yeah, I've done tons of podcasts. If you want to get different nuggets of knowledge for me, just search for Greg Connolly Trifecta on Google, and I've tried to pay it forward as much as possible, to future entrepreneurs. I'm an LP in a couple VC funds, and really try and I get a lot of help over the years building businesses, and I try and pass forward as much knowledge as possible. So it's out there. Listen to them, and I'm sure you can glean some nuggets, even if it's kind of current relevant information like what we talked about today.
Yeah, well, again, appreciate the nuggets that you shared on our show today. Was very helpful, very educational. So, Greg, once again, thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.